Please like, share and subscribe. And always remember, by watching and sharing this video, you are the resistance.
That's it.
Hate me because I'm right. I'm not here to be liked. I never wanted to be liked. I wouldn't have said the earth is flat if I was looking, if this was a popularity contest. Why would I say the earth is flat if I wanted to be liked? It's more like an experiment to see how many people are possessed with this dick-sized contest that they didn't come to this revelation. Your images of earth are paintings. They're CGI. It's not proof. There's still no real time, video, or film of your earth as a ball doing one day spin. Just 1 day spinning. Just 1 day in real time, 24/7. I mean, even that. Forget the 7-Eleven 24/7 camera surveillance on the planet from a distance where we could see it and watch how the entire thing operates. Scientifically, if I were to spend trillions of dollars on an agency, the most valuable result of all these technological endeavors and feats and innovations of sending equipment at high altitude, at far distance from the Earth, would be to have a camera watching the weather patterns as they really unfold on that real ball Earth model. We don't have that. Time's up.
This is what you guys do. But I've been doing the research. You guys have been telling me that there is a Hubble Space Telescope taking pictures of stars. You've been telling me that astronauts are in the International Space Station. This is what you guys have been saying. Don't tell me you haven't been telling me this. Let's go into this thing here now. Let's go into the layers of the atmosphere. We have the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and the exosphere. Now the satellites are supposed to be in the thermosphere. Thermo is dealing with heat. Now, how hot are we talking? Okay, well, according to Wiki Answers, the temperature goes from 600 degrees Celsius to 2,000 degrees Celsius. I don't know if you know how hot that is, but that's as hot as a blast furnace. We're supposed to believe that they have these machines in the thermosphere where the temperature goes up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. This is, think of it, the satellites will become balls of flame. It will become a comet. They're moving at 17,000 miles an hour. And you have supposedly 26,000 satellites in space. This is what they said. But yet and still, they're telling us that we have things looking like this. Look at this. Does this look hot to you? This is gold, and come on, guys. This is ridiculous. Anywho, this is how satellites would actually look at the temperature that they're telling us the thermosphere is. They're telling us that thermosphere is from 600 degrees Celsius to 2,000 degrees Celsius. This is how it would look. This is how the Hubble telescope would look at 1,200 degrees Celsius. This is how it would look. This is how it would look from 500 to 1,000 degrees Celsius. Guys, this doesn't make any sense. This is a fantasy. Here you are telling me that you got satellites taking pictures. Just please send me footage of a satellite. Now here we have a blast furnace. As you can see, a blast furnace, the temperature is from 2,000 to 2,300 degrees Celsius. With a blast furnace, you create iron from putting ore into it, and then you blast it with air. This is how this is how the satellites would look if they were really in space, but they're not, because they're fake. They don't exist. The only source that you think is credible, and this is what they're going to tell you. Now, when it comes to the thermosphere, this is what they say. The highly diluted gas in this layer can reach 2500 degrees Celsius during the day. Even though the temperature is so high, one would not feel warm in the thermosphere because it is so near vacuum that there is not enough contact with the few atoms of gas to transfer heat. A normal thermometer would read significantly below 0 degrees Celsius because the energy lost by thermal radiation would exceed the energy acquired from the atmospheric gas by direct contact. Now, if that's not a crock of bullshit, I don't know what is. I got a bridge to sell you. You know, does this even make any sense? So you mean to tell me that this layer of the atmosphere is as hot as a blast furnace, but it's actually not hot? It's actually below 0 degrees Celsius. This is what they're going to tell you. And now you're going to have to explain this to me. So before you come to me and tell me I'm crazy, before you come to me and tell me that I'm a troll and I'm looking for views, you're going to have to explain how the hell a layer of the atmosphere could be 2500 degrees Celsius, but actually 0 degrees Celsius. Because if that's the case, then we shouldn't feel the heat from the sun. Because according to them, the sun is far out in the space. It's far out in the vacuum. So you have to explain to me, how do we feel the heat from the sun? Someone has to explain this. I'll wait. I'll wait for someone to explain this, because I know you guys are geniuses. You guys are intellectuals that's watching this video. You guys are smarter than I am, right? So you're going to have to explain to me how we feeling the heat from the sun. But here we have a layer of the atmosphere that's supposedly hot, but because it's in the vacuum, it's not hot. I'll wait for the explanation, because I know some of you guys are Einsteins. I know you guys are prodigies. You guys are nerds, right? You guys are so smart. So I'll wait for this explanation. Let's move forward. Now we're going to look at these melting points, because this is really what 1000 degrees Celsius. But all the elements that it's made of can melt at 1000 degrees Celsius. And now here's a picture of the Hubble Space Telescope. This is in the friggin' thermosphere. And this is how it looks. You guys have no problem with this. And of course you have rocket propulsion. Now, I didn't even write any notes for this one because this one is so ridiculous. So you mean to tell me they're using rockets in space? But they said that in space is a vacuum. How are you pushing against nothing? It doesn't make any sense. Alright, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a boat. Now with the boat, you have the oars or the propeller. The propeller or the oars are pushing against water. Let's say you take the boat outside of the water and you're still, you know, pushing the propeller or spinning the propeller, and you're still, you know, rowing the boat. You're not going to go anywhere. That's the same principle for rockets. In the Earth's atmosphere, you have an atmosphere to push against. So when you blast a rocket, you'll go forward. But when you're in space, according to them, they say it's a vacuum. So how the hell are we seeing satellites with this? How are we seeing satellites with this bullshit? Someone has to explain what type of propulsion system you're using, but they're telling us it's satellites. Because this is the picture. This is a NASA photo. This doesn't make any sense. This proves even further that these satellites are fake. These satellites don't exist. And now they have, what's this? Solar panels? So you mean to tell me that they are more environmentally conscious in space than they are on Earth? Are you serious? So they don't have solar panel cars, but they have solar panel satellites. It doesn't make any sense for them to all of a sudden be so conscious. But that's besides the point. But my main point is, this rocket propulsion in space is ludicrous.
Now how many satellites are in orbit? You can't get a number. But that number will range from anywhere between 1,500 to 20,000 satellites. You'll always get a different number as to how many satellites exist in orbit. What do satellites look like? The old satellites from the 70s were very large. The Navy even recently had an operation where they pretended to shoot a satellite out of orbit to minimize its danger in re-entry, and they described this satellite as being the size of a bus. Satellites used to be quite large. Nowadays, they want you to believe that satellites can fit in the palm of your hand. Now they have CubeSat satellites, and they can be deployed from the International Space Station by hand. An astronaut can toss one of these CubeSat satellites at the Earth. Doesn't even matter how he throws it at the Earth. You could throw it at the Earth or towards an orbital plane. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you toss it and it's tumbling uncontrollably, but this is what they'll have you believe.
I'm telling you now, there are no satellites up in space. All the information is gathered from the ground, so there's no need to have satellites floating around in space, taking images.
There's a serious fraud going on right now in every space agency worldwide.
And then it has a claw that can grab big pieces of space debris, and then little pieces of space debris get caught on the sides by panels. Of course, there's no in-between. Do they catch the middle-sized pieces of space debris with the box? And then debris drone 1 does not send the package down to Earth to get incinerated. No, the whole thing goes down to Earth to become incinerated, and it's fucking useless. So because they say there's over 500,000 pieces of space debris, they have to send thousands of space debris drone 1s. But the important thing about this is the camera. They show you a camera on this satellite drone. So somebody is operating that claw and they're getting this space junk. Why can't you see the video from this camera? This thing has a camera. Wouldn't you like to see this thing in operation? There's the camera. Has little lights on it. It can be recorded. So you can have satellites with cameras in space. You should research satellites. You'll always get a different number of how many satellites are supposed to exist. You will hear approximately 1,500, approximately 3,000, approximately 5,000. You will see people that apparently have sources and links, and they will say that there's 6,000, 9,000, and this number will continue to go up higher and higher. The number that you'll probably be believing of satellites existing is the number 13,000. And if you keep going for more and more sources, you're going to get numbers up to 20,000 satellites that are in operation. And they're supposed to exist in geostationary orbit as well. That's so far away from the Earth. You see this image of Earth? This is cropped. That's how far away this satellite is from the planet. This is supposed to be real video of Earth from space. They showed this on television to the public on Dish Network. It's supposed to be coming from a satellite. And so the point is, you can have cameras in space. They tell you that you can. In the Apollo missions, the famous Apollo 17 picture of Earth from space, that was taken with a Hasselblad camera using film from behind glass. One of the astronauts took those famous pictures that are over 40 years old that you see all of the time. So you can have cameras in space, apparently. Here is the Apollo 17 picture of Earth from space, and this is very important because you're shown this your entire life, and it's in every single science book. And even though this is over 40 years old, they still show this in the news to represent Earth. They'll be talking about space or the Earth or whatever, and they will insert this image into the news article. They're not even talking about Apollo 17. You see this image all the time, and they still use it. They use it on the covers of science books. This is printed literally all over the world in every single science book, even though it's getting incredibly dated. In 2022, it's going to become 50 years since the Apollo missions. This picture will continue to be printed all of the time. You see this image of Earth? This comes from a computer model. This is from a model that's on a computer of the Earth. And the clouds, the formations of the clouds are exactly the same. And this is very, very important. And I'll tell you why. Well, here is the computer model. The clouds are exactly the same. And you will see images from this computer model all of the time. You should really memorize the cloud configurations on this model, because you're going to be seeing pictures from this model your entire life over and over again. See, the Apollo missions are extremely dated, but they made this, and now you will see this literally your entire life to go along with the Apollo missions. See that swirl of clouds? You should memorize that. Here's a beautiful detailed image from that model. You see that huge swirl of clouds between Australia and Africa. And there it is on the model. And the crazy thing about this is when you type Earth from space in the image search, Earth from space, not NASA composite computer model of the Earth, literally Earth from space, which means you want to see pictures of the Earth from space in the image search, these images will come up over and over and over again. And the sick thing is, they show this model in documentaries about space. They show this to you. The same model with the same clouds. They don't even change it. Here's the front, apparently. Do you recognize that? You literally see this all the time. Here's a picture of Jupiter and the Earth. It's not a real picture. It's an illustration. But see, it's the Apollo 17 image of Earth. It's over 40 years old, and they still use it for illustrations in modern times. Here's another image that somebody put together, and they used the Apollo 17 image of Earth from space, which you've been seeing literally your entire life over and over and over again. And your kids, as they go to school, they see this image in their science books. There it is, used again. In modern times, it's over 40 years old. It's going to be 50 years old soon. This is something that could have existed over 30 years ago. If satellites are supposed to be past low Earth orbit, why are they showing you Apollo 17 over and over and over again? They're not even talking about Apollo 17. Apollo 17 has nothing to do with this bullshit that's trying to educate you. The answer may surprise you. Yeah, there's Apollo 17 again. If you type Earth from space in the image search, you'll see this image over and over and over again. But you've already been seeing it your entire life. You've probably seen that image of Earth over 1,000 times in your life. See, people are brainwashed. They have this imaginary, just this crazy delusion that there's hundreds of pictures of Earth from space because of what they watch on television with computer-generated images. You know, you go to the movies, you see Earth, and you have this idea that all of these pictures of Earth must exist. So when I say there's no pictures of Earth from space, people think I'm fucking nuts. Show me the pictures of Earth from space. They don't exist. Look at this. Earth's rotation on its axis. Apollo 17, Apollo 17, Apollo 17, Apollo 17. This is not only the most overused image in NASA history, this is the most overused image of all time in all of human history. All over the world. It goes on and on and on and on, and the sad fact is that there's supposed to be billions of people on this planet, and they don't have a problem with this. They cannot figure out that there might be something wrong. Now there's NASA's composite that I showed you. That's from a computer model. It's not even supposed to be a real picture of the Earth from space. The Apollo 17 image of Earth from space is supposed to be real. That's why they use it all the time. But it's extremely dated, and now they have this computer model, so they can start using this all the time. And it's not even supposed to be real. They don't pretend that it's real. They say it's from satellite data. That's how they helped to construct it. Now, what if NASA never made this composite computer model? Would the Apollo 17 image be in this picture? Probably. Here, the composite computer model, you're literally seeing this all the time. Here it is, used again, Earth, 8,000 miles. Now, if NASA had not made this computer-generated bullshit, would you be seeing the Apollo 17 image in this picture? Probably. I mean, you see it all the time in other pictures. Apollo 17, Apollo 17, Apollo 17. Nobody has a problem with it. It's crazy. Here's another image that somebody made. Now, why don't these people have any options? Why are they using NASA's computer-generated model of the Earth? Had NASA not made that, would they be using the Apollo 17 image of Earth from space? Very highly probable that they would be using that. Because they do that all the fucking time. This is another side of that composite computer model, which I showed you earlier. That's why you should memorize the cloud configuration, so you can spot this shit from a mile away. But somebody used it because, what, they have no fucking choice? There's probably less than 350 pictures of Earth from space that are supposed to be real. And then you'll constantly see bullshit like this that is based on composite data from satellites that they had to make and stitch together. In modern times, you're looking at computer-generated bullshit. I mean, you gotta really think about this. What if NASA did not make this composite computer model of the Earth? You would be seeing this shit over and over and over and over again. Apollo 17. How does that make any sense? Isn't NASA doing work in the solar system? No, here's Apollo 17 shoved right up your ass all the time. You can't figure anything out. They even use this composite model that's not even supposed to be a real picture. They use it on the cover of Nova DVDs, which is supposed to be educational. They use it on the covers of science books. And could you imagine, had NASA not made this fucking thing, they'd be using Apollo 17. Because they always fucking use it anyway. Sometimes it's slightly modified, but the cloud configurations are exactly the same. Somebody slightly edited it. It's still the composite computer model. Look up Earth Day. Look up the campaigns for Earth Day. Look at how many times you see this fucking composite used. NASA is supposed to be doing work in the solar system. They show you pictures of moons and planets that are supposed to be real. Where are the pictures of Earth from space? Wake the fuck up. These satellites past low Earth orbit don't exist. These are your buddies. You get these over and over and over again. It's NASA's composite or Apollo 17. Pick your poison. They're both fucking fake. Apollo 17 is supposed to be real. It's not. The Apollo missions are bullshit. Is the world going to figure this out? Because I say NASA has less than 60 years. The 50th year anniversaries are coming up, and they're going to brainwash the hell out of you about our accomplishment of going to the moon. People are going to believe that we went to the moon 6 times in 4 years with 1960s technology, and then a decade went by where we didn't go back. But this isn't a decade we're talking about. This is the 50th year anniversaries in 2022 when it's going to be shoved up your ass so that you cannot think. You're going to see this on fucking magazines, news, all over the place because they don't want you figuring this out. So what about when it's been 100 years since the Apollo missions, where we went to the moon 6 times in just 4 years, and 100 years passes by? Hey, NASA is fucked. I don't care if they fake a Mars mission. They're not going to get away with this shit forever.
You search images of Earth from space, you're going to see that image. I mean, why would you have fake images and computer animated images of Earth when you can have the real thing? So basically, when you search Earth from space, you should see all real images of Earth from space. Like, why everybody thinks NASA does science, so why wouldn't you see that?
From data from NASA's
No, you get this,
which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this.
Ribbons of imagery. Why would you need to do that? Because there's supposed to be satellites past low Earth orbit. Why can't you just take a fucking picture?
And then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from space.
Gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Them.
Yeah, of course it has to be.
To sort of simulate the atmosphere.
Man, fuck you. There are no pictures of Earth from space. And this shows you that those GPS satellites do not exist, because if those satellites existed, there would be pictures of the Earth from space. They would have the ability to do that. I wish.
There's a serious fraud going on right now in every space agency worldwide.
300 men, he says, all of whom know one another, direct the economic destiny of Europe and choose their successors from among themselves. Joseph Kennedy, and he should know, said that 50 men have run America, and that's a high figure. Benjamin Disraeli, the first Jewish Prime Minister of England, who spent his life uncovering the network of subversive organizations, said the world is run by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. And your own Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter, he said that the real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes. Senator Inouye says that there exists a shadowy government with its own air force, its own navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideals of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself. Hell, they created the law. You think they're bound by it? Think again. You're bound by it. They'll kick your door in. But you can't even stop them from the atrocities they're perpetrating on the world. Not yet, anyway. And as a general rule of thumb, to those who have studied this and are also beginning their study in this, let's just realize when it comes to these power hierarchies at the top of the pyramid that I'm talking about, as a general rule of thumb, it's not 100% true, but it's about 90% true. If you happen to see the rulers, the controllers, the kings, the princes, the dukes in the media, that means in magazines and newspapers and in encyclopedias and so forth, and history books and on TV, chances are they are not the architects of the programs and the policies that they are instigating. They are just what I refer to as the people's champions. They are just what I refer to in the book as overworld figures. With very few exceptions, they are not the architects of doom. I have a DVD coming out next year called Evil's Willing Servants, which will tell you who are the architects. That's a sort of a missing piece. But just for now, know that if you see them on, the fact that you just see them on television, or the fact that you see them in the common media, they're lower henchmen. Never forget that. It'll empower you to know that, because they are not the henchmen. They're power, drugged, sick, perverted, toxic individuals who serve powers behind the scenes. There's no reason in the world to fear them. The symbolism confirms what I'm saying. Symbolism, the key is symbolism, symbol literacy. They may appear on paper, of course, as at each other's throats, different parties, different networks, all appearing to have this faux democracy, this faux conflict. But as the symbolism clearly shows you, they all sit at Cecil Rhodes' round table. They all are comfortable, the criminals of the world, pretending through their faux conflict that the ship of state is also difficult to run, and the human race is just so hard to rein in and keep them all under order. We have to prevent war and bring peace. It's so damn difficult. Look at how difficult our job is. But whose table are they sitting around? What are the symbols telling you at the G7 summit? On paper, again, it appears to be a two-party system. Is it? They're happy to tell you actually it's not. They don't going to tell you that verbally, but they're certainly going to tell you in other ways by the symbolism that they use, which I hope that most people in this room are able to decode. But think of the mass of humanity who are not. Ancient symbols being used in modern context, all over the media, all over the world. Languages, words, symbols, that we need to be able to understand what they mean. Doesn't mean the symbol inherently is negative, but it ties in with the fact that they have obediences and allegiances. Not only are these individuals using ancient sacred symbols, but they are a one-party system. Whatever way the coin falls, they win. But more than just using sacred power symbols and whatnot, these individuals have hidden allegiances that you and I are not meant to know about. So what allegiances? Well, if I'm making a promise to you, but I've got my fingers crossed behind my back, how good is that promise? Well, these characters have very much got their fingers crossed behind their back. They have allegiances, all right, that come before their allegiance to humanity and to the world and to the professed stuff that they're talking about. Here's a perfect example. In Washington, D.C., the statue of George Washington. The whole story is shown to you here. Let's read it. George Washington, it says under the plinth, underneath the bust, Freemason and first president. Let's read it again. Freemason and first president. Now, I'm not even American. I'm actually from Belfast, but I take offense to that statement. Should it not be first president and Freemason? It should be, but they're telling you how the pecking order works. What comes first? And underneath you have the Masonic G. So these behind-the-scenes allegiances come before, and you need to know about it. That's why you never get justice in the courts. That's why you never see any of these people are brought to justice, because of their allegiances that you need to know about that come long before their allegiances to you. Now, in the inception, let's not forget that your greatest enemy of this country wasn't the French, wasn't the Russians, wasn't the outer Mongolians, wasn't the Iraqis, it wasn't the Afghanis, wasn't the Arabs. Oh, guess what? Look it up in a history book. You tell me, who's your first enemy? England, Britain. Now, the British royals were not worried that force of arms had not secured America for them, right? Because basically they got their ass whipped 200 years ago. Let's get started with wondering what happened to America in the meantime to become so complacent. Let's leave that one aside. But armed force, they realized, was only one of many insidious strategies that the royals and their henchmen have used to undermine any rival. The Fabians were sent in as agents in the following years to do their work. Okay, they got plenty of other strategies. So President McKinley, Henry Ford, Howard Hughes, Charles Lindbergh Sr., Senator Joe McCarthy, and anyone else who knew what was happening were either politically or even physically assassinated. Now, who are these Fabians? They're a wing of the secret societies, and they believe in what's called the war of attrition. You should write that down. The war of attrition is very important. The Fabian Society, founded in 1883, played a catalytic role preaching the inevitability of gradualness in the movement towards a socialist society. Socialist is a secret society term, by the way, not a political term. We'll come to that later. Taking their name from the Roman warrior Fabius, who learned to wait patiently before striking a fatal blow against Hannibal. Hannibal is charging over mountains. Hannibal is plowing through jungles. He's hauling elephants across Asia Minor. He's busy crossing lakes. Well, Fabius is sitting whittling on a piece of wood, waiting patiently, right? The spider in the web. Originally, before and during the American War of Independence, relations were good, very good, with many other powerful nations, like Russia, like France and Germany. People looked to America with respect and admiration. But the Vatican and the British had a great deal to lose if the world's other nations and governments began to base their political systems, you see, on the original American model, which was scintillating. The whole eyes of the world was watching. The Tsar was sending you ships in the War of Independence. Relations were good. Instead of a Cold War, which you had to endure, your forefathers had to endure lasting generations, what would have happened if the admiring Tsar of Russia had modeled his rule, right? He was getting ready to do it, by the way, before the Bolsheviks moved in. But what would have happened if he had totally based his rule on the American system? And what would have happened, may I ask, to Vatican-controlled South America had North America remained sovereign and solvent up here, right? All that mind control down there under the name of religion. What do you think would have happened down there to that country had America been a shining example? You think that the British and that the Vatican could, tolerate that? The American Democratic Party originally was called the Democratic Society. It's actually an offshoot of the Jacobin Club, or the Jacobin Society, which is nothing more than the Illuminati that we've been talking about. The Illuminati's main tentacle operating in the political domain is known in England as the Fabian Society. Their socialist, so-called progressive, but it's really a pseudo-progressive ideology, is disseminated by the Democratic parties and their other left-wing interests. On your dollar bill, you have the Illuminati symbol of the pyramid. The Illuminati was founded, as I said a little earlier, by Adam Weishaupt. But when he passed on, the mantle moved to Giuseppe Mazzini, and finally moved to the man on the right, Albert Pike. Every single human being in America should know the name Albert Pike, and very few do. We're talking, you think that the George Bushes and the Clintons and the Roosevelts, and you don't know about Albert Pike? These are the hidden ones that shape the world events, but we almost know nothing about them. Albert Pike is a seminal figure in the creation of the Ku Klux Klan, by the way. George Washington said that, "I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan of the Illuminati." Now, your neighbor won't believe you. He'll call you a crank. But, you know, the fact is that even George Washington was all knowing about it. It was not my intention, he says, to, you know, doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. Joseph Willard, the president of Harvard University, spoken at the time of his retirement, he says there is sufficient evidence that a number of societies of the Illuminati have established in this land. They are doubtless striving to secretly undermine all our ancient institutions, civil and sacred. We live in an alarming period. The enemies of all order are seeking our ruin. Should infidelity generally prevail, our independence would fall, of course. Our republican government would be annihilated. Now, just like I was explaining about the Theosophy, the mystical organization that was infiltrated by this Lucifer trust, so Freemasonry, which once was a great archive of knowledge, a mystical doctrine, coming out of the ancient world, preserving many metaphysical secrets about the human body and about our relationship with the Creator, that was also infiltrated. Well, why not? If I was them, I'd probably want to do it. There it is, ready and waiting. You know, all set up. So this group of the Illuminati were able to infiltrate that as well. We'll read that in a minute. But the thing is that it alarmed not only George Washington, but the head of World Freemasonry, Grand Orient Freemasonry at the time, was the Duke of Brunswick in the 1700s. And he actually stood up publicly and asked for the worldwide disbandment of Freemasonry because he understood that it was being infiltrated in this way. We're going to read a caption together from the Duke of Brunswick. And I want you to pay particular attention not only to what he's saying, but the way that he is saying it. Because that is an incredible modern appeal. He says, I have been convinced that we, as an order, have come under the power of some very evil occult order, profoundly versed in science, both occult and otherwise, though not infallible, their methods being black magic. That is to say, electromagnetic power, hypnotism, and powerful suggestion. We are convinced that the order is being controlled by some sun order, after the nature of the Illuminati, if not by that order itself. John Robinson, a Scottish man who wrote the first book exposing them, his date is 1798, so just don't think this is a modern thing of the 20th century. John Robinson was approached by, very much in the same way as Anthony Sutton in this country was approached. John Robinson was approached by members of the Illuminati that they wanted intelligentsia. He was a university teacher, you see. He kind of looked into it, and as soon as he found out what was going on, he not only didn't join, he exposed it in an incredible book called Proofs of a Conspiracy. And he quotes Adam Weishaupt, who said that the great strength of our order lies in its concealment, that it never appear in any place in its own name, but always covered by another name and another occupation. None is fitter than the 3 lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it. He goes on to say in another place, these good folks swell our numbers and fill our money box. Set yourselves to work. These gentlemen must be made to nibble at the bait. But this sort of people must always be made to believe that the grade they have reached is the last. Well, don't you have fraternities and grades from school upwards, where the same policy goes? I don't know if you know how much women played a role in the exposure to secret societies. You need to know about Madame Blavatsky. You need to know about Nesta Webster. And you need to know about Edith Starr Mill or Lady Queensborough. In her book, she says, at the turn of the century, she says, we must allow, quoting from Weishaupt, we must allow all the federations to continue just as they are, with their systems, their central authorities, and their diverse modes of correspondence between high grades of the same right, organized as they are at present, but we must create a super right, which will remain unknown, to which we will call those Masons of high degree, whom we shall select. Through this supreme right, we will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown. So, yes, full circle. All of these individuals, and in my other work, it's just voluminous how much information we've got on this, that they're talking about a hierarchy. The symbols tell you alone. There it is, the two-dimensional, removed 14th level, with the eye, which I believe is the eye of Aton, the solar cult eye, officiating over the lower ranks.
If you've retired, you don't have anything to worry about. It's the 3rd time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace. We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time.
We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
Please like, share and subscribe. And always remember, by watching and sharing this video, you are the resistance.